I'm gonna run upstairs and grab my coffee.
Okay, there's somebody in the
Gotta
waiting
get your
room.
juice.
There's someone in the waiting room and I didn't hear a ding.
No, they joined. Emily joined. Oh, you do have to admit them in.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see how.
Okay.
It is. Yeah.
Hi there.
I want to make sure the sound
She's
works.
still connected. Here, me and Mike tested it. Okay, and it's coming, everything's coming in and out of that speaker, so our microphone and
Where should we
audio.
put this?
Emily, how's the sound? Oh, she doesn't know, because she.
There's fine.
Where should we put this?
Where do you
Just
want- you
leave
want
it
me to
here?
move?
Well, we want them to be able to see it, so maybe put it over here.
Yeah.
Yeah, good idea.
Oh, here, just flip that little.
Oh, is it
blocked? Yeah. On both sides. Yeah, perfect. I'm gonna. Now it's dry.
Okay. Right here?
Camera on.
I don't know how to tell, Karen.
Shouldn't there be a little light?
It was on earlier.
So to Emily's face, I think there would be, look at that, yeah.
This one?
There we
Yes.
go.
Okay. So I want to move this. There. Okay. Perfect. Okay. And they can see
Yeah, I
that.
was gonna say,
Perfect.
it'd probably be difficult for them to read what's written on there. I don't think you'll have a lot of luck with that.
Probably quite a bit of.
What you can do is
Move
have
it
somebody
here?
type in the chat what's being written. Yeah.
We're just doing.
Yeah, it's just gonna be pretty quick. We could say. 'em.
Yeah, we could say it.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's just say them.
You know, there's a fair amount of reflection just from here, so I don't
Yeah.
know what the camera's picking up.
We'll just have a
I don't
discussion.
hard time.
We'll just have a discussion.
Yeah, you just talk about it.
We can write 'em.
That works
We
too.
can refer back.
Huh?
We'll write them down over there so we can refer back.
Yeah.
Do you want me to be your van?
Yes.
What is she gonna be? Or is she gonna be the writing?
Have a board. We have a marker.
Yes, they're on top. I got purple and red, so. 1 minute. Look at that wind.
Oh, we do, huh?
Are we supposed to go from 2 to 2:30 or 2 to 3?
I think it's 2:30.
I saw that in the digest.
Is it,
Did
is
you
it,
stand out in the digest? Says in the digest 2:30.
right,
There you go.
that's what it says, but
We can
you
go
know,
on.
you're the presenters, you get to decide, but. you know, There you go. There you go.
We just did a peer evaluation in my class that just wrapped up.
No, we just.
So.
Yeah.
I had them anonymously review their other groups.
Yeah.
And
Can you hear us, Emily?
had,
Hey everyone, yep, I can hear you.
Great. Carol's here.
Hi, Carol. It's brain
Because
exercise.
it's vital.
right, it's like, why work that hard?
It's
like,
brain
did I hear that?
exercise. It's like touching your toes.
Yeah, I know.
So here's one group's project. They made a.
We'll wait a couple minutes and then we'll get started. See if anyone else joins us.
Okay, great, thanks. I'm just en route, so I wanted to pop in and listen.
Thank you for coming out.
Hey, Carol.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for hosting.
Wow, amazing. So, kind of like, how would I say about that? And then perceived effort that went into the project and the final product. So they assessed on the budget both of them. And then they did those ones. And then just asked for.
Yeah.
So, I haven't looked through them yet. 'Cause
Yeah.
Fresh out of the classroom, but
Yes.
that's what we used. See how it went.
Nice. Love it.
Well, do you want to start?
Karen, hey Karen, is Karen there?
Hello.
Hey, while we're waiting.
Yeah.
Can you talk briefly about that session that you're having in the spring and March?
Conference, absolutely.
That you have a call for proposal, like, is there anything you think I could contribute?
I am certain there are things you can contribute. What pops into my noggin immediately is, did you not teach mindfulness to kiddos in the school system?
Absolutely.
How did that go? What did you do? How could others implement that? That would absolutely be appropriate. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was just, I had some ideas, but I was like, maybe Karen could give me an idea about what she thinks would be really good.
Well, that's what I know you've done. If you have other things to offer along those lines. One of the big things I'm looking for folks to talk about is, because it's K-20, the idea of how do we get out into the community and encourage, our families and our schools to talk about what does it mean to go to college? How do you help raise awareness about that path, so that at least they know it's an option for themselves and their family, right? So we serve so many first generation in our community, and a lot of youth, and sadly a lot of counselors, it doesn't occur to them to actually encourage our kiddos to come up to college, right? And so are there any efforts that any of the programs you oversee have done to connect our regional schools with K-12 schools with us? So what kind of outreach and, trying to raise awareness about what it means to go off to college. So like at Cal Poly Pomona at Haiku Conference, I watched them. They have a parents committee, and they go into the schools, the parents and the college go into the schools, grade schools, and have a college day, and they raise awareness about what their school is, and help the kids just to plant those seeds and let them know, hey, you can come up here if you want one day, and so getting them a chance to think about what do we maybe want to be when we grow up, and so stuff like that.
We just saw Alegria, so she might be trying to find us.
The conference has multiple areas of concentration, and so anything health focused, obviously right up your alley, equity focused, accessibility, thinking about accessibility and physical health. I think those are particular challenges that you might oversee with your programs. How do we include kids in phys ed who have different types of abilities, right? So talking about any of that, but a chunk of it's really on behavioral mental health. How do we recognize, the needs of our community and our kiddos and the educators, quite frankly, because there's as you know, a lot of secondary trauma, a lot of exposure to other people's suffering that educators have to contend with. And so practicing that self-care as well.
That's right up my alley. That's what I'm passionate about. So
yeah, and that would be great. So it's not just how do we serve the students, it's how do we help take care of ourselves and create policies and practices school-wide, right? And so it's school-wide, institutional level analysis, policies, it's classroom practices, and yeah, how do we help our educators take care of themselves, not just focus on the kids.
cool. Sounds great.
Yay.
All right, well, I guess we'll get started. And you can see our first slide. It says staying alive, very important in our fields. And, we want to explain how to hook the audience and how to keep them engaged. So we need everyone to stand up. I know, Karen, you just sat down. And I know, Emily, you might not be able to stand up, but if you can stand up. Dancing.
Stay alive. Stay alive.
Yeah, there he is. Yeah. So, we think a catchy beginning is really important. And some of you may have seen this, this pyramid of retention that students have. And you could see like teaching others, immediate use of learning is pretty important in what we're going to discuss today. But this has kind of been debunked. It came out in the 80s, and you can see how clean the numbers are. Like, and no research ever turns out that clean. But we still know that, we still know active learning is important. All right.
Go on with it.
So I'm Dr. Christine Rochester, and our presentation, go ahead and introduce yourself.
I'm Dr. Tina Twilliger, and our presentation is going to be over how to teach students how to present, how to make a quality presentation, engage their peers, and then how to assess themselves. So that's why we think we are qualified to have you learn from us, because we have been doing this in our classes each semester for quite some time now. So
Yeah, and with large classes, it makes, and even if it's groups of people, because not everyone works all the time with students, but with you have a large group, like maybe at our session, they wouldn't necessarily be students, but you could have them for time's sake. You don't want to have every single student presenting. If you have 50 in a class or even 30 in a class, every student presenting takes up a lot of time. So that's why having them work together is really important. Now we're going to do the pros and cons.
yeah, so one thing we wanted to talk about was engage you all and what you see the pros and the cons of group presentations in classrooms, or group presentations in
Group projects.
group projects,
Group work in general.
Yeah, group work in general. What are some of the pros you see with students, and what are some of the cons you see?
What do you think?
Yeah,
And develop communication skills.
Yeah,
yeah, absolutely.
communication skills.
I would hope so.
Carol, Emily, you have anything to add?
Either a pro or a con of group work.
I just think they're 21st century skills, since we're often required to collaborate in the workforce, and just being able to work through challenges together and celebrate successes too.
Mm-hmm.
I would agree. I think that it's really an application of skills of how people are going to interact in a workplace. And so it's really important to help them work through not just the end result of their presentation, but work through the process of the project.
Yeah. Okay.
Awesome.
Hello?
Anything else or cons?
Collaboration,
Hello?
creativity.
What are some cons?
I was gonna say, I think that's Carol saying.
Computer.
Collaboration and creativity, you're saying?
Those are 21st century.
Yeah. What are cons though of group projects and group work?
These might kind of play off of each other, but one thing that I'm thinking of as a pro is that, well, in working with a group, you learn you don't know everything, and you don't have to know everything. That there are other people who
Yes.
can fill in those gaps.
Yes. That's a good one. Because there was like, well, I don't know how to do that. Well, you thought you're here to learn, right?
Right.
Rather than, yeah.
And of course, that depending on how the group dynamics or how they approach that could also be something of a con, or at least for some individuals. They're like, I don't know how to do that, so therefore.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right.
Or maybe what they're really saying is, I don't want to learn how
Yes.
to do that. So that becomes difficult with, trying to sort out the group dynamics with that.
So resistance to learn.
Yes.
So some kind of resistance to learn.
Resistance to learn, or resistance to try something new,
Mhm.
Whatever.
That's good.
Yeah. That is a good one, because it's usually, I don't know how to do that.
Some students are extremely introverted and don't have an interest in working with anyone else, or they've had bad experiences in group work
Yeah.
and found it easier just to do it themselves. and
Yeah.
be in control of their grade. And
Past trauma from group work,
Yeah, yeah,
right? Where someone either takes over the whole thing and they don't feel included, or vice versa, where they just don't put any, things don't get done, they get a bad grade because of it.
They either haven't
Or
developed or
relationships.
don't know how to use the communication skills to communicate with one another. I just
yeah,
recently, last week, one of my international students had to do a group project, and she was really upset because she couldn't get her group to communicate with her. And so when it came time to do the presentation, she was really upset. She's like, it's not gonna be good because we haven't been talking to each other.
Right, right. Lack of communication is a big one. And then accountability, okay? So that gives us a few,
It's difficult to rely on others.
trust,
If they're just physically unwell or, unavailable. We had a team, a group of athletes, and there was, if it wasn't that away game for that team, it was
Yeah.
that one's or that one's and that one's. And so what
Yeah.
attracted them to each other, their commonality, was made for a real difficulty in their group, because somebody was always gone or close to them.
yeah,
And that fed on itself in a negative way.
yeah.
so,
Lack of trust, lack of accountability, lack of communication, which leads all to that.
yeah, trust,
Yeah, and the
trust,
trust
and
is,
then
yeah,
also
trust and rapport is lost.
trust, and then also, what would that be if students don't show up continuously? I think that's accountability.
Yeah,
So that's what you're thinking that is? Okay.
What about a con if they're not set up for success in the design of that?
yeah, so when they go to
Yeah.
present, you can see, or when they go
Yeah,
to
so
turn it in, you
um,
can see that,
So maybe their directions or the design of the group project that they is anticipated in didn't have individual and group accountability. It didn't have checkpoints to make sure everyone was.
Yeah.
contributing. So the environmental factors that they don't have any control over were not in place when to govern the
Yeah.
assignment that they were given to
Yeah.
make it be successful or
Right.
to enable success.
So the structure of the
Yeah.
assignment. Right, and so that's what Tina and I, want to help with today.
I'm the same way.
It's trying to come out with how to help with some of these cons that we have, because we could see there's a lot too, the positive parts of this. And I've noticed, like in my smaller classes, it's really easy just to do individual projects, because then you don't have to worry about this. But if we do a good job of this in our 1 and 200 level classes, then by the time they get to be juniors and seniors, this is going to flow a lot easier.
So first thing that we want to talk, we missed.
You're not sharing the screen, are you? Or are you using?
Yes, you-
Yeah, we're just sharing this part.
Or if it's outlined in green, it's being shared.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, they're not seeing what we're seeing. Okay, never mind. Pay no attention to what I said.
Well, you can't see it up there, that's why.
That's why I'm like, cool.
So a couple of things that we want to talk about in our presentation is 4 focal points. We're going to do quality of presentations. We have a contract that they're going to have with peers, audience engagement, and self and peer assessment. So the first thing we want to talk about with quality is, when you think about it, do your students know how and why they present? So think about a 100 level course. You're like, okay, you're going to do a presentation. Okay, so what's the first thing they do? They put it together, have a whole bunch of writing on it, put it up there, and then they read off the presentation, right? So we really, and when we get involved in these groups, we want to start with the peer relationship right away. Okay, leadership development and voice development, having them speak out loud, not reading off the thing, looking at the audience, not looking up here or at the ground, and then applying research in real time. So another thing we think about is, when we do get students coming in at a 100 level, research is very new, right? So we have to show them how to research, right? And why they're researching their project, whatever it is in their group. Okay, and then develop high quality presentation making skills. So these are the things that we want to help our students with at the very beginning when we're talking about our quality.
Right, to make their presentations more engaging. And the first thing we have here today is contract building and relationship examples. I think Tina's going to open that, like what a sample contract could look like that you're going to give your students in the beginning when they first start this work.
So it's kind of small. Oh, I can make it bigger, right? Right here.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is one that I had for my 101 class that I had each student, as soon as they formed their groups, I had them go ahead and each one of them filled this out and turned it in. And then this is just talking about how is each team member going to participate? What are your agreements for participation? So as you can see, we have participation, communications, how are you going to communicate? And then meetings, where and when are you going to meet? Couple more, which contacts are appropriate and which ones are not. So is it not okay for a student to be MIA for a week? Because they usually use Snapchat and all of the social media. And then conflict. This is a great one, and Karen helped us think about this one. So how are you going to solve conflict? So when you have, maybe you're not agreeing on something, or it's Grammarly. Yeah. I didn't even see it. So how are you going to solve the conflict? Lack of participation, not going to meetings, or not communicating. What is there has to be a consequence. So as a group, let's discuss this consequence so it doesn't all relate on the instructor when it comes time for grading. So that's just a quick example that I use. Okay. What's up?
Quick question.
Yes.
So you're talking about this, the contract that you use in one of your classes?
Yes.
Okay. How do the students form their own groups, or do you have a way in which the groups are formed?
I personally, because I let them do it. I do, just because they feel comfortable. I don't like to put them in groups. I don't know. And sometimes, because I do a lot of group work, so I'll be like, okay, choose a group with different people that you haven't worked with before throughout. But like something like this, the final project, I'll let them choose.
Yeah, and one of the things I did this semester was I just got a deck of cards, and I gave like aces out because we had cliques, right?
Sure.
So in order to break up the cliques, I used cards, and then and so for some projects they have to be in a clique. They can't be with their clique, right? And because they tend to go with the same people, and then which can be beneficial because then they develop those relationships with those people that they didn't have, because especially when you're working with freshmen, this is their first semester. They don't have friends. Right. And so all of a sudden they have friends and they want to stay with them. But when you introduce them to other people, all of a sudden they realize, well, those people could be my friends too. So I think we have to do both.
Yeah. And I did like your card thing when you told that to me. I thought it was good. So as you can see, we have the students make an agreement with their group, and they just decide how it's going to be handled. And then so we have one more. This one actually, Karen.
This is something
you use in a Google form. Just kind of the same things, but hers a little bit more detailed. So the groups, they had their name, right? And then if someone disagrees with you, what are you going to do, right? So these hard questions that don't come up until later on in the semester, they can answer them at the beginning, and then they have a plan. It's a strategy, a plan on how to deal with things that aren't working well.
And it makes them feel safer.
Yeah.
How do you kind of look over their plans? So especially like you talk about freshmen.
Yeah.
And really probably any level, but we don't always know how to handle conflict, various types of conflict or disagreement or whatever.
Yeah.
Do you look at their plan and kind of say, help them understand whether or not it's workable, or do you just kind of let them figure it out on their own?
So I look at it and I look at it and see like, okay, this is what you say you're gonna do. Now, I don't go to them unless there is a conflict. And then if there is a conflict, I'm gonna say, okay, so what did we say in the plan? Okay, so that's what you said. So now think about that. But like there's 60 of them. So if I have the time, maybe. But yeah, so it sits there. It's like a contract. So it sits there, and if a problem arises, then you can pick it up.
Okay.
So I don't.
Do you help them fill that out, Karen?
Yeah.
That form, they fill out individually, and then I collapse their answers by group.
Yeah.
And then they discussed their answers. And I did that as a follow-up because their initial round of doing it was insufficient. It was like, you're not really thinking through these parts of it. And so I gave them a chance without any assistance. Then I said, I don't think this is going to be helpful yet. Let's build upon this. And so I asked them more specific questions to really then draw out. And then I'm like, now let's discuss your answers with each other.
And so you did this before they actually began the project?
Yes, this was the beginning of the project.
Okay.
Because the process of collaboration is as important as the final
Absolutely.
outcome. And so that is part of the work, is figuring out what do we have to do to work together.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah. All right.
Which is time consuming, but it saves
Absolutely.
you
Yeah.
frustration
In the long
later.
run.
I have very little,
Yeah.
discussion with them of what's going on.
Well, and had I seen all this, I probably would have implemented that now for next semester when I teach this class. That's going to be implemented at first. But I'm like, well, let me just try the other part because we're at the end. And so, but next semester, I'm definitely trying that. And it's going to be a whole thing, kind of like you did, because I think it'd be beneficial.
Yeah, that thinking about the process and all.
Yeah.
kind of that front loading. is,
Yeah.
Like you say, ultimately saves time
Yeah,
and a lot of frustration,
yeah,
I'm sure.
yeah. I mean, because there's always going to be something coming up. And
Yeah.
it's like, well, and that's part of the assessment, the self-assessment, as well as others in the group. Did you step up and say something? We provided some communication tools. Did you pick any of the tools up? And try to apply them, right? It's like, I know you told us about them, but I'm too scared. Okay, so we have to figure out how do you get brave, and what is it gonna take for you to feel safe enough or brave enough, using all that kind of positive language to get there. Not there yet.
Yeah.
There's a lot less blaming
Yes.
is what I noticed.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, yeah, you can't just complain about, they didn't. I'm like, well, what did you do? And one of those questions is, what's the difference for you between criticism and feedback? To get you to think about, how do I want to be spoken to?
Right.
Because we're not always really good at that. And some people want to be yelled at, it seems like, almost like, do you want to be yelled at to motivate you? Because that kind of negative motivation is like, I don't want to yell at you.
Yeah.
So
I'm not gonna do
what
it.
else can we do?
Right, right.
Yeah.
Old bad habits, what you're used to.
Can I say something real quick?
Yeah.
That's all so awesome. And I think that the whole idea of letting the group engage ahead of time, like to create a plan and guidelines and all of that is so vital, because I think they tend to hold each other accountable really well. And then really, and you might be getting to this, but then when there's the feedback or the evaluation, having them evaluate themselves as well as the other group members. Most of the time, if someone didn't put a whole lot of effort in or whatever, they give themselves really low grades.
Yeah.
They're aware of what their contribution was, but I love the idea of doing that ahead of time, but then all of a sudden, and that translates into the audience, right? Because when they're prepared and they're a team and they know what the expectations are, so I see this as all a process. It's so exciting as instructors to set it up well for them to succeed.
Thank you.
Right, yeah, and we're gonna get into that a little bit more too. Another thing we were thinking about, like how, when they're presenting, what is the behavior of the audience? What do we expect out of the audience? And I think that is always a tough one because, ever since COVID now, everybody's allowed to have their electronic device, it seems more than ever. And so are they okay with that? Are they okay with people having out phones? Are they okay with people having out laptops? Or, how do you be engaging in your presentation, like we talked about? Are you reading off the board? That hook in the beginning, how do you get them hooked into whatever you're presenting on interest them? I'll let you continue on.
Okay. And then another thing we want them to think about once they have their presentation from their group project is, what does your body language look like? Are you up there with your arms folded? Are you staring at the ground? And can they hear you, right? And we did kind of talk about that earlier, but it's really important, because if you can't hear your presenter presenting, what's the first thing you want to do? Where's my phone? Where's my computer?
Shut down.
Yeah, exactly. So, getting them to think about these things is something that we're trying to do as well.
And that's where assistive technology comes in.
Yeah.
Also, it's like there's one classroom downstairs, the auditorium downstairs.
Yeah.
It is equipped with headsets.
Yeah.
And a mic system so that people can hear, but we don't have that in every classroom.
No, like we don't.
So
Yeah.
if you have a student who's hearing impaired,
Yeah.
your presenters could be doing a fantastic job of projecting or whatever, but they're still not being heard.
Mm-hmm.
And how to even know that that's a need in your class. Like making sure you know your students' accommodations.
Yep. Which, yeah, you don't always know them.
Well, they don't want to tell you.
They don't.
No, and that's
Yeah, and they don't know sometimes.
Well, and part of the problem with that also is for the younger students, their parents have taken care of it since they were in kindergarten. It happened behind the scenes automatically through their whole life, so they don't even know where to start.
Yep.
To advocate for themselves.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and that's something that we need to think of. I mean, to help our like right now, we don't have the hearing impaired part on here. You know what I mean? Like, do you always just put that on just because to have it talking as you're,
I should have been trying to.
Well,
I forgot.
But I don't know how to do it.
Oh,
right.
On
But
Zoom, it's not that hard.
yeah, but you know what I mean? Like, not all of our instructors know. So that's another thing to think about.
Right. Yeah, so, as we go forward here, some of the things our students do during their presentations. And then, because I always put an assessment piece as part of it. Like, what did you teach them? What did they learn during your presentation? Tina uses the 1 minute essays. I think it's a pretty good idea. Like maybe an exit slip.
Yeah.
Having them have some goals for the students.
The students to what they want the students to get out of the group or out of the presentation.
Our students love to make the Kahoots.
Yes, they're so much fun.
Yeah, and they're getting pretty good at it. I've had a couple like glitches where they tried to use paid stuff.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You can only do up to 10 questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the students love that, and then TikTok videos.
And then TikTok, you know how much students love TikTok. So you can anything TikTok you put in there. This all came from TikTok. Like all these little animations. So yeah, just how can they engage their slides to help so their audience doesn't fall asleep.
And now we're going to do something to engage you. And I don't know how to get to the next slide here. Which one?
It'll be that one.
Yeah. Okay. So if we had people on Zoom, I know Emily is there. But what our plan was to have a breakout room on Zoom and then have some breakout rooms here, where we do some ideas for you about how to make it your own assessment for things that you can do next semester or the next one you have. And here's a couple examples of what we're thinking about. There's peer group. Here's a peer group assessment that I've been using. And
this is one you created.
Well, Scott Robertshaw had something like this, and we've been using it in Canyon orientation. And, with any of these rubrics, I find the more you have, the harder it is, the more numbers you have here. And I've kind of gone to a lot of my rubrics are just like yes, no now. You either meet it or you don't. And then this is the one I used this year in 101, where they were Uninvolved, the 2 was a team player, contributor, 3 was initiative taker, super teammate. And so they've had their self on there, and they evaluate themselves on 1 to 3, and then they put their teammates down. And it was interesting because I did have some students like give their self a lower score than they gave their teammates, which I thought was pretty interesting. So that's one thing you can use. And then another one is.
Can I ask what you do once you have that information? Do you take an average?
I don't use it as,
of their groups?
I don't use it as a grade. I tell them up front, this is not part of their grade, because I feel like we get a more honest assessment then. Because, even with self-assessment, I had students self-assessing today on a scale of 1 to 100, what would you give yourself? Well, is this going to be part of my grade? Because if it's part of my grade, I want to bump it up. But if I just want to be honest, I'm going to give a lower score, which is crazy, but this is how they are as freshmen and sophomores, right? The freshmen and sophomores, and then hopefully, like, when I do self-assessment in every class, so it's like by the time they get to be seniors, they're like not afraid to be honest and be part of their grade. Because I'll go and put it right into the blackboard, whatever number they give me, once they've, learned how to do self-assessment. But in the beginning, I know, you can't, because they're just going to say, I'm a stud, I should have 100. I mean, I've had students say that before. It's like, yeah, okay, all right. So no, I don't make it part of their grade. So I don't. And I think especially for freshmen, I mean, I think you can later on, but for freshmen, it's not that good.
Just out of curiosity, how similar are their assessments to your assessment of their work and
Oh, how comparing?
yeah.
I know that I do, like, go ahead.
Go ahead. The group work, you can't really, you're not always, you don't see what happens. This is behind the scenes.
But yeah, I guess my question is
For their presentations.
Because you were talking about how, for like the upperclassmen.
Oh, yeah.
Well, however they assess themselves, that's.
If they do an honest job, right? Like I had a guy today say that he thought he should get like an 85, right? And the rest of the class was trying to get him to raise his grade. And I don't understand why, but he's like, yeah, my honest answer is an 85, but if it's going to affect my grade, because he knows his grade is already there, like at B level, right? And if he wants to try to get to a 89.6, which they think should be an A, then he wants to lie to bring it up, which is really interesting. But usually they're pretty good. I mean, assessing themselves, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
For that kind of work. And then here's a self-assessment thing. You want to talk about that?
So this is actually the wrong link got put in here. So this is it's the wrong link.
Okay.
But this is a great thing that we can, this is actually this top hat thing that I found, and it's all about assessments for learning and stuff. And so excellent. But
oh my gosh, thank you for putting that on there.
Yeah.
Because assessment is just not for testing.
Yes, exactly. Yes, as learning, of learning. So it has, so it's the whole self-assessment. It's a top hat. I just Googled and found it, and they had all this stuff on there. So you have this. It's not the one I wanted to have in there.
Is that the one I have, the self-assessment I use? So the self-assessment I use is like, I have them in the beginning of the semester, depending on the level of the class, we usually make about 5 goals. What are some goals? How are you going to measure those at the end of the semester? And then, and then what are you going to do every week to work towards those? So that, and then go over those again with them at midterm, sooner if I need to, and see if they're making progress. And so we can apply those to the group projects too. Like, what are your goals as a group? What are your individual goals? That way, when they go to assess themselves, are you 1, 2, or 3? Because if you don't have any goals, it's harder to know if you reached them, if you got there or not. So you can see on that first assessment.
I think your goals are go to slide 8. There, that's your goals.
Okay.
Yeah.
We could look at that.
So that's a self-eval.
This might be, okay. So learning objectives, how do you grade yourself, A, B, or C, outline what you're gonna do, determine whether you met your objective or not. So then pretend you're somebody else and you're looking at your goals. Will you understand how they're gonna meet them or not? So that's something I do for self-assessment. It's for more for the big course, but it can be broken down into individual assignments too. So, and usually if there's a project in the class, they'll put that on there. Like like one of my students, she wanted to learn a lot about youth sports. And, that was one of her goals for the class. And then she did her presentation on that, and she kind of became the mini class expert, if you want to call it that, on youth sports. And she did a great job, and that was one of her goals. And the other folks that, their presentation may not have been as good, they didn't have that as a goal, is to, learn so much throughout the whole semester on that. So it's amazing how, if they set a goal, they have a better chance of reaching it, like we all do.
Yeah.
So that's what we wanted to do. We wanted you to, think about, was there anything from this presentation that you could take with you?
Or to use in your class.
Yeah.
That was our plan.
Yeah, I actually teach all online classes, so I'm just sort of starting to think about what this might look like in an online format. Any suggestions?
You know what, Emily, that top hat,
Oh.
go in there and there's they have activities. Let's see,
Okay.
so I'll get the thing. Hold on, was it self?
Yeah, that was it.
I'm gonna copy. I'll put it in the chat.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll definitely check that out.
Here we go.
Would you all be willing to send us your PowerPoint?
Absolutely.
And it's gonna be posted on the CTL site.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
thank you.
look at that, Emily, because that's amazing. And a lot of stuff that I do when it's is it going to be asynchronous or synchronous?
I'm asynchronous, but it's
Got it.
interesting. They kind of move together as a cohort, so they all know each other, even though it's not technically a cohort model.
Okay.
I am, right when we went to COVID and I wrote that teaching online course or
Yes,
whatever.
yes,
I have a ton of stuff. I have a
You do.
module on.
yeah.
Yeah, send it my way, Denise, if you have it.
I was gonna just post those resources that I created and link
Thank you
that
all.
Yeah,
on the website.
and that would be great because I'm teaching a lot of just online as well.
Yeah, it's got linked all kinds of stuff.
Perfect.
Cool.
Thank you.
And I found, like, for the freshman class, giving them some class time to work on the project is helpful.
Yeah,
But, they have to meet outside of class too,
Yeah.
which can be very challenging. Like, for athletes, it's very challenging. So the online class, it seems like that's gonna, they should be able to carve out time for that meeting, for those meetings.
Yeah, and
with
I'm thinking like in an asynchronous format too, how I could make it flexible or like a mini project so it's not as time intensive because they all work full time, all my students. The large majority of them do. So thinking about outside the box, but still doing some of the elements you talked about today. And we do like self-reflection in my internship course and things like that. But this was great. So thank you guys.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from, Emily, being in the schools. So how do they do a collaborative project, and how do they present that? Do they have to present that collaboratively online?
No, I mean, I have an optional get together for our internship at the end of each semester because it's pretty much an internship or a class I teach every semester, but they're not required to. They're required to meet with me and their mentor regularly, and it's more of like a one-to-one thing with me or with their mentor, and then we have the discussion boards obviously, but because they're all working full-time and it's meant to be synchronous, they don't have strict collaboration or attendance requirements. So anything I do is optional as far as synchronous.
Right. Okay.
so
So it's tricky.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
on those ones too, you're just gonna have to put them in groups too. Like you're gonna have to be
Yeah.
like, this is group one, because it's gonna be too hard for them to reach out to the other. So that's one thing to put them in
There's some
groups.
tools in Blackboard
Yeah.
too. Use
Yeah.
for groups where they can self-select groups or
Oh,
you
there
can
is.
assign them to
Or
groups.
random
Yeah.
assign them.
Oh,
Yeah.
nice.
It's like a section to
Okay.
post their work and collaborate. And so if you wanted them to collaborate within Blackboard, then you have record of all their collaborations.
Oh,
And
nice.
that can kind of eliminate any, so-and-so didn't.
That's good to know.
Like,
Yeah.
I was there every week.
Yeah.
And so you've got running documentation.
That's
of
awesome.
Contributions and a way to
Right.
grade everything they turn in automatically. So
Okay.
ways to make that easier.
But it's
Cool.
kinda
Well, this gives me some things to think about too.
how to have them collaborate when they all can't get together at the same time. So it's just, you know,
Right.
like.
That's my whole
Good
drive.
point. Great point, Christine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Project based from beginning to end.
So is mine.
So, and I was project manager.
Yeah. Yeah, I know you were.
Of
course you
Sounds like Denise has a lot of really good ideas for you too, Emily.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, so get with her about how to do that better ASAP, because I need to learn that more too. All right. So then we have takeaways. We kind of already just did our takeaways. Like, what are you gonna take away? Do you have anything that you could take away?
Yeah, I really am intrigued with the contract. I haven't used something like that before. I've had students do a fair amount of group work and presentations and such. Especially working with the international students, they don't always have a lot of experience with that kind of thing. And so definitely the contract. I like that idea as not only a way to help them think about what they're going to do, but help develop some of those communication skills and problem solving skills. So I definitely would like to learn more about that and use that.
Yeah, it's gonna be a big time chunk in the front. I haven't used it.
Yeah.
This is the first semester I've taught that 100 level class in a long time. So adding that contract in is really gonna take a big chunk of time in the beginning of
Yeah.
the semester, but I'm really excited about it. Using the contract with them.
A non-related activity to warm them up to working together. We have 3 bags of PVC pipes and connectors and whatnot. Having them work in a group to generate, a product that somebody has to, sales pitch, right? So and you can watch how that group functions. Who's the Denise? Here's what we're gonna do,
Later.
right? And then who's the salesperson? Who's good at schmoozing off the top of their head of, for 1995, you're gonna blah, 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 right?
Yeah.
And who sits back and is tentative and, and so watching their style. And then asking them to reflect upon that experience. Did anyone arise as a leader? Did you hear anybody give support? What did that sound like? Was it verbal? Was it nonverbal? Did somebody lead in? Did you see somebody take something away? How and getting them to engage in that critical reflection from the get-go is like, that it raises the awareness of what are we doing in groups that they may not have thought about before.
Yeah.
And there's no pressure because it's a goofy game.
Yeah.
Where are
I've
those
done that with
PVC?
Legos.
Downstairs, behind the circulation desk.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes.
You can just go down and check them out
Okay.
with your library card,
All right.
with your name. Yeah, and if you want help with that, ask me or Karen, we could come over and help you with that. Just the
Okay.
first time you do it. Okay.
But unfortunately, I don't have any students this semester, but hopefully.
Well, and even if it's, you're working with one of the affinity groups, it's like, hey, let's play together today and see what happens.
Right.
So, yeah, lots of ways to.
Good, thank you.
Yeah, I like that. It's a good way to break that in.
Yeah, one of the things that I've done in the past, in starting groups is that, the T chart looks like, sounds like. You pose the question, you have the 2 columns like this and you say, basically, you're starting out with a premise that most of them have had some kind of experience working in a group. It could be a group of 2. It doesn't have to be a large group or anything like that. And posing the question of what does a successful group or a successful project look like, sound like? And then ask them to think about that and, list those things that somebody watching a group that's being
Nice.
successful, how do they interact? They're close together, how do they talk to, what does that sound like? Are they, yelling at each other, you know, to their conversational voices, whatever. And you can go through and create that looks like, sounds like, and use that as kind of an outline for them to, you know, you can put it up and have it posted, you know, so where they're always, you can refer back, they can refer back to it, or you can refer back to it as, so, especially if they're doing in class kind of thing, which I know is not something that is always possible, particularly at this level, because, you know, you're not seeing them every day, that kind of thing. And you're not going to give perhaps all that much in-class time to be working on projects, but, you know, it's something they can refer to in terms when they are together.
Yeah.
Do we look like an effective group if somebody were watching us? Do we sound like an effective group? So I found that useful too sometimes.
I found this semester with one group, I was under the impression as an observer that they were a very successful group because they socialized well. However, at the end of the semester, I heard them saying in the last project workday, because they did get a lot of in-class time because I know how difficult it is, and I wanted them to prioritize this project. And I heard them say, we're gonna need to get together this weekend. And I'm like,
too social,
yeah, exactly. And I was like, you're not as far along as I thought you were. Because I was like, oh yeah, that group's got it going on. And then I realized, oh, that group looks and sounds, but it's not actually getting work done. And they have someone in their group, and this individual acknowledges that they're a distractor. And so they know their role, and it's really frustrating. I mean, I you know, like,
We're nice to each other.
yeah, I mean, they do it with humor, but I'm just like, I have a feeling the group would like to strangle that person because they probably wouldn't have needed to give up their Saturday to get to that place. And then even just today and sharing it out, they're like, yeah, because I asked them, well, estimate how much time you spent on Saturday. And one person said 3.5 to 4 hours. And then the distractor, the person who did distraction, said, actually, it was more like 2 hours because we did a lot of messing around as well. And I laughed like of course. And the person next to him is kind of like, yeah, it still was 4 hours of my time. You know, they didn't say it, but you could see it on their face, like it still was 4 hours. Yeah, it could have been just 2 hours, you know? So the confessions or the portrayals of how much time was spent was really interesting. And it was like they were just telling on themselves. Like, yeah, because I kept messing with them when they were doing this. And I'm like, what's wrong with you?
Why are you doing that?
Except to say, I want to be scolded. I'm a bad girl. You know, and that's their trauma they bring to every class I've had them with. They're better. I don't want to hurt them as early in the semester, but I want to hurt them because they just annoy the crap out of me. And so I have to just keep leaning in. I'm like, okay, you were my challenge. You were my challenge. You were my challenge. You know? And it's just, it is. And I don't characterize them to them that way. But I mean, we have a rapport of, so you were engaging in a lot of distracting behavior. You know, like describe the behavior and not the person. But it's like, oh my God.
Almost holding the group hostage.
Yeah. And so, but they did. They laughed a lot as a group, and yet I have to wonder, well, how much of that laughter is, you know, it's gritty, right? Like every parent does. Like
they're feeling that way,
right?
They're the one working with that person.
It's tough. Group work is tough.
It's I agree.
Human beings.
Then they develop that rapport with each other, and then they're distracted. Like David Volk was doing a presentation in my class, and they were over here talking about their airplanes and getting rides to the airport during David's presentation, and I had to get up and go over there.
You had to go over there.
Quiet them down. I'm like, come on. You know, so we want them to have relationships, but they don't even know how to have a relationship like out. They can only meet during that class time. And that's now social hour instead of academic time.
Right. And that's the hard part of attention spans. Not, I mean, you know, are 17-year-olds, 18-year-olds now born into complete social media. I mean, Linda
Oh,
didn't,
yeah.
right?
Oh,
yeah.
They literally had
Yeah.
it on day
Yeah.
one of their lives. So, you know, it's a chronic ADHD scenario. That's the norm, not the
Yeah.
From one thing to the other, and whatever's going on over there is just,
Yeah.
foreground. Which brings us to the end of our presentation. Okay. So we're coming back to our song. Thanks for attending.
Her walkout.
There you go.
There is a party at 5:30 in the ballroom.
Yeah, that's right. You gotta walk in doing the dance. Thank you, Emily.
Thank you all so much. This was awesome. Thanks, Christina, Tina.
Thanks a lot,
All right,
Emily.
see y'all shortly. See y'all shortly. Great
Okay.
day.
Oh, yeah, we have another
We're
meeting.
having a watch party for the next soccer team and something if you want to pop in.
That was too loud, right?
No.
Nice.
It's never too loud. It's too loud, you're away from the national.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Well, but it's not a very good device.
The national
Oh,
championship.
well, good for them.
Music, right? I wish we had more people. I told
I'd
her
heard
to send
that.
it out there.
I'd known
She's like, I don't
Yeah,
want
I'm
to.
sure you would have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I didn't send it out.
I think.
But I think people are really busy right now. I told her we should have done it in the
It's a
beginning of this
very-
semester.